It's World War II, and German bombers are dropping bombs on London. A mother in a lovely home rushes her children to the shelter as soon as possible. She begs her eldest son, Peter, for assistance. Her young son, Edmund, is standing in the window, watching the fire rain down from the sky, and his mother pushes him away. Susan assists her younger sister Lucy in leaving the house, and everyone rushes out to the shelter. Edmund suddenly recalls something and returns to the house. Edmund is followed by Peter, who sends his mother with the sisters. Edmund selects a photograph of his late father, a fighter pilot who was eliminated in action during the war. Peter follows Edmund, and the two of them narrowly avoid the bomb blast. When they arrive safely at the shelter, Peter chastises Edmund for nearly eliminating them today. Mrs. Pevensey, Peter's mother, stops him from saying anything else. Actually, Edmund is very close to his father, and he resents both his father and his mother for allowing him to go to war. Mrs. Pevensey sends her 4 children to their uncle, Professor Kirk, by train the next day. Not only that, but many parents are sending their children away from the battlefield to a safe location in order to save their children's lives. These 4 have no idea where they're going. When they arrive at their station, they find it to be small and deserted, with no one to greet them. Mrs. Macready arrives in a horse-drawn carriage a short time later. Professor Kirk's mansion is enormous and opulent. All 4 of them are intrigued by the house. Mrs. Macready tells them not to run around, not to touch the antiques, and most importantly, not to bother the professor in any way. Hearing these things makes them sad. Lucy longs for her mother. Susan and Peter amuse her by saying that this place is enormous and that they will have a great time here tomorrow. It rains heavily the next morning, so they can't go outside to play, and they can't make any noise at home anyway. They play spelling bee until they become bored. Lucy invites Peter to a game of hide and seek. Peter agrees and begins counting, while the other 3 flee for cover. Lucy can't find a suitable hiding place, so she walks into an empty room where a cloth is draped over something. When she removes the cloth, she discovers a beautiful antique wardrobe. She quickly hides in the closet while Peter continues to count. However, contrary to her expectations, the wardrobe is quite large. As she walks towards the back, the bushes begin to rustle as the coats hanging in the closet are removed. Lucy continues on, surprised, and finds herself in a snow-covered forest. A lamppost is lit with fire there. Lucy looks around in awe. She is startled to hear footsteps. Lucy is looking around for someone when she runs into someone and hides in fear. The person's belongings fell, and he hid under the cover of a tree out of fear. Lucy then arrives and takes one of the parcels. She hands it to him, and the man emerges from behind the tree to take the parcel. Lucy notices he's half human, half goat. When Lucy asks what he is, he tells her he is a fawn. Then Fawn introduces himself as Tumnus. Lucy approaches him and introduces herself. In this manner, Tumnus discovers she is a human. He insists on Lucy taking her home, and over tea, he tells Lucy that a white witch rules here, which is why Narnia is snow-covered. Otherwise, Narnia was very lovely and lush, and all the fauns sang their folk lullabies. Tumnus starts singing a lullaby to Lucy, which causes images to appear in the fire, and Lucy falls asleep while watching. It is dark when Lucy opens her eyes. She looks around, concerned, and finds Mr. Tumnus sobbing. She asks him why he is crying, and he tells her that he has done a terrible thing by kidnapping Lucy and is now taking her to the White Witch. Lucy becomes agitated upon hearing that. He explains that the witch has ordered him to bring humans to the witch if he sees any in Narnia, so he will now bring her to the witch. Lucy, on the other hand, informs him that they are now friends. Lucy begs Tumnus for assistance, and Tumnus safely transports her to the lamp post. He wants to return Lucy's handkerchief, which she gave him while she was crying, but Lucy says Tumnus needs it more. When she emerges from the closet, she exclaims to her brother and sister that she has returned, surprised to discover that no one here knows where she has been for so long, and tells them that she had reached another world through this closet. But no one believes her. Lucy becomes agitated. Lucy is unable to sleep at night as she is thinking about Narnia. Then she gets out of bed and walks into the same empty room, carrying a candle. Edmund notices Lucy wandering around the house and follows her. Lucy enters the closet and is whisked away to Narnia. Edmund too follows Lucy into the wardrobe and ends up in Narnia. He too is taken aback. Lucy is nowhere to be found, so he wanders through the woods, calling out to her when the White Witch appears. Ginarbrick chastises Edmund for interfering with the Queen of Narnia, and Edmund tells him fearfully that he doesn't know because he came here with his younger sister. He tells him frantically that his sister has been here before and met Mr. Tumnus. His sister had told him about this location, but he was skeptical. The witch summons Edmund and seats him in her carriage. Edmund comes to trust her after she gives him a hot drink to drink and a Turkish delight to eat. She then inquires about his siblings and instructs him to bring the rest of his siblings to her castle in Narnia, causing him to become perplexed by her words. In exchange, she promises to provide for all of Edmund's needs and to make him king of Narnia one day. Edmund falls into her trap, and after the White Witch departs, Lucy arrives, delighted to see him. They both return. Lucy is overjoyed because she now has a witness. She informs both Peter and Susan of this, but Edmund refuses, claiming it is all in Lucy's head. Lucy runs away, heartbroken. They all chased after her. Lucy runs into Professor Kirk, hugs him, and begins crying. Later, Peter and Susan appear in front of him in the professor's office. They tell him about Lucy, who thought a wardrobe in an empty room led to Narnia, a magical world, and went there. When the professor hears this, he is shocked and asks Peter and Susan if they believe what she is saying. Peter and Susan both say no. The professor explains that she is their little sister and family as well, so why don't they believe her? The next day, those 4 brothers and sisters are outside in the garden playing cricket. Edmund fires a shot, and the ball sails through the window and into the house. When the 4 of them enter the house, the ball has struck an antique armor and caused it to fall. When they hear Mrs. Macready's footsteps, they dash across the house to hide. They can't find a suitable location, so they all end up in the same empty room with a wardrobe. They all enter the closet. Making room for themselves in the wardrobe, the 4 of them eventually arrive in Narnia's snowy forest. Susan and Peter are both taken aback by the location. Both of them apologize to Lucy. They also discover that Edmund lied to them. Edmund irritates Peter and begs him to apologize to Lucy. Edmund apologizes grudgingly to Lucy. Lucy brings them to Mr. Tumnus' house, but everything is broken and strewn about. The secret police have imprisoned Tumnus for meeting human, according to a note posted on the wall. Lucy begins to cry because she believes Mr. Tumnus' capture is due to her. Mr. Beaver arrives and safely gets the 4 to his hideout via secret passages, where his partner is waiting for him. She greets all 4 of them and feeds them the best food she has. Meanwhile, Beaver informs them of Aslan's plan, but Peter informs them that they have been here for a while and know nothing about this location. According to the Narnia prophecy, the 4 siblings will come to Narnia and free the land from the White Witch's control. Beaver informs them that Aslan is constructing his own secret army across the river. He also informs them that they must fight the White Witch. Susan stands up and prepares to leave when she hears this. She claims that their mother sent them so far away from the war to keep them safe. They can no longer fight in any war. Edmund had sneaked out during the conversation. He plans to visit the White Witch's palace. It is too late by the time these people discover Edmund's absence. Beaver asks Peter if Edmund has ever been to Narnia, which leads the people to believe Edmund has deceived them. Beaver stops Peter from pursuing Edmund, claiming that it's the witch's trap. Beaver is concerned that Edmund will not reveal the White Witch's secret. Beaver informs them that the White Witch wishes to eliminate all 4 of them in order to avert the prophecy. Meanwhile, Edmund, shivering from the cold, finally arrives at the White Witch's palace. This location, contrary to his beliefs, is desolate and ruinous. There are numerous statues of various creatures. Edmund is stalked by a wolf guard. Edmund informs him that he has come at the request of the White Witch. When the witch realizes he has come alone, she imprisons him. In prison, he meets Mr. Tumnus, who is in critical condition. Edmund is being punished for betraying his family and being avaricious. The White Witch dispatches her hunting wolves to eliminate the rest. The wolves track down Peter and his sisters, but Beaver rescues them via a secret tunnel. The wolves are obstinate and continue to pursue them. Once again, a fox from Aslan's group comes to their aid. When the White Witch discovers that the rest of the children have fled, she arrives at the prison. Mr. Tumnus is set free and brought to Edmund. She informs Mr. Tumnus that he has come to see her because of Edmund. Mr. Tumnus is depressed. Edmund informs the White Witch about Aslan's secret camp in order to save Mr. Tumnus' life, and Mr. Tumnus feels terrible. She takes Edmund and prepares to travel to the location he specified. Peter refuses to return without Edmund. Beaver informs them that only Aslan can assist them. The following day, the 3 of them travel to Aslan's secret camp with the Beaver. On the way, they must cross a frozen river. Peter and Susan are terrified because they believe it is hazardous. They are pursued by a wagtail across a snowy field. They flee and hide at high speeds. They soon discover, however, that their stalker is none other than Father Christmas. He is overjoyed to see these 3 and to be able to give them gifts. Lucy is given fire flower drops and a dagger, which can heal any wound. He gives Susan a bow and arrow, as well as a horn, with which she can summon help from anyone in danger. The sword is then given to Peter by Father Christmas. He explains that these are not toys, but rather weapons that they can use in times of need. According to Father Christmas, spring has arrived in Narnia. Lucy mulls over his words after they've left. As a result, they believe that the frozen river's water has begun to melt. The wolves sent by the White Witch then arrive. Wolves surround them as they attempt to cross the river. Then, all of a sudden, the frozen snow on the waterfall begins to melt, and the water begins to flow. The river's water begins to flow at full speed, and they are all swept away in it. Fortunately, they all made it out of the river alive. When the 3 arrive at Aslan's secret camp, they are astounded to discover a variety of creatures they have only read about in fantasy books. They all come to a halt in front of Aureus, and Peter informs him that they have come to see Aslan. Everyone in the room bows in reverence, and a large lion emerges from the tent. This lion represents Aslan, the true king of Narnia. He greets the 3 visitors and inquiries about Edmund. Beaver explains that Edmund has betrayed them, which enraged all of the creatures. But Aslan assures them that there will be a further explanation. Peter claims that everything is his fault because he was too harsh on Edmund. Peter approaches Aslan for assistance in retrieving Edmund. Aslan consoles them and promises to do his best. Susan and Lucy then go to the canal to refresh themselves. They both have a good time there until wolves appear from nowhere and attack them. Susan summons assistance using her horn. When Peter and everyone else hear the cry for help, the two sisters have already climbed the tree. When Peter tries to fight them with his sword, the wolves laugh and tell him that he lacks the strength to do so. Aslan captures one of the wolves, while the other wolf attacks Peter and is eliminated with his sword. Aslan frees the wolf and instructs the group to follow the wolf, which leads them to Edmund's location. The wolf is being pursued by a group led by Aureus. They soon arrive at the White Witch's lair. Edmund is chained to a tree there. While the White Witch and General plot, Aureus and his companions quietly rescue Edmund. Edmund makes it safely to Aslan's camp. Aslan converses with Edmund alone. Peter and the others make no attempt to disturb them. After speaking with Edmund, Aslan approaches Peter and tells him not to discuss the past with Edmund. Edmund's behavior is understandable. He is forgiven and hugged by his three siblings. Susan suggests they return now while they are eating, but Lucy objects because Narnia requires them. This time, Edmund joins Lucy in her support and explains how dangerous the White Witch is, having witnessed her cruelty and violence. The other two siblings agree to help save Narnia as well. They are all now preparing for war and learning how to use weapons. The White Witch, on the other hand, is not tolerant of everything. Her cunning mind devises a plan, and she comes to Aslan and tells him that, according to Narnia law, only the White Witch has the right to his blood. Edmund must be sacrificed to stone as a punishment for his treachery. Aslan meets the White Witch on his own. As the meeting concludes, Aslan declares that Edmund will not be sacrificed. Everyone applauds, and the White Witch asks Aslan if he keeps his promise, to which he responds with a loud roar. The White Witch sighs and walks away. Edmund's life is saved, and everyone rejoices. At night, everyone sleeps in their tents. Lucy notices footsteps. She informs Susan about it. When they leave the tent, Aslan is heading into the forest. They both silently follow him. Aslan addresses them a little further on, indicating that he is aware of their presence. They both preceded him. Aslan tells them to stay in their tents for the time being. He requests that these two sisters return now, as he will travel alone from here. Aslan continues on his journey. Susan and Lucy follow Aslan to the other side of the tent rather than entering it. The two learn that the White Witch and her army are congregating near the sacred stones. When Aslan arrives, the White Witch is overjoyed and tells everyone that Narnia will be here forever and she will rule it forever, starting tomorrow. She ties Aslan up and then stabs him to eternal sleep. Susan and Lucy are watching the entire scene. They both realize that Aslan offered himself as a sacrifice instead of Edmund, but they both cry silently for Aslan. After eliminating Aslan, the White Witch informs everyone that they will attack Aslan's army the following day, in the hopes of defeating the army and ruling Narnia alone. Susan and Lucy approach Aslan after everyone has left. Lucy tries to give Aslan a healing drop, but Susan says it won't help him. The two sisters are engrossed in their conversation with Aslan when the little mice appear and begin ripping Aslan's rope. Susan and Lucy also lend a hand. The sun is about to rise when Susan informs Lucy that they must leave because they must inform the others. Lucy enlists the assistance of the trees and requests that they deliver a message to Peter. The trees leave and petals travel to Peter and deliver the message to him. This sad news has been passed on to everyone by Peter. Edmund approaches Peter, who informs him that he is not prepared to lead this war. Edmund encourages him, telling him that Aslan trusted him and that he also believed he could lead the army well. Peter directs battle preparations. As the sun rises, the two armies collide. Peter orders an airstrike and leads his army to meet the army of the White Witch. The combat is extremely difficult. Aslan's army is small in number but powerful in courage. However, as soon as the first rays of the sun appear, Susan and Lucy reluctantly rise to assist Peter and Edmund. A loud noise is heard as they both descend a few steps. When they turn around, Aslan is no longer on the stone, and it has been split in half. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Aslan emerges from the center of the pillars. He is completely healthy, with no visible signs of injury. Susan and Lucy are surprised, and Aslan explains that the White Witch is unaware of the true meaning of the sacrifice. If a person is sacrificed without any crime, this stone breaks and resurrects him. Aslan carries both of them on his back. It looks out onto the White Witch's palace. There are numerous Narnian statues. Mr. Tumnus is also included in the statue, and when Lucy sees him, she begins to cry, and the statue suddenly comes to life. Aslan claims that more soldiers are needed to assist Peter. With his magic, he returns all of the statues to their original state. Aslan, Lucy, and Susan lead a new army to the battlefield. The White Witch is the most powerful fighter on the battlefield. She moves forward, her magic deflecting each blow. Peter orders everyone to bring the army to the rocks. The two armies are fighting between the rocks. However, the White Witch's magic nearly defeats Peter's army. Ginarbrick strikes Peter with an arrow, knocking him off his horse. Aureus arrives to defend Peter and confronts the White Witch. During the fight, Peter tells Edmund to take Susan and Lucy home, but Edmund refuses. Edmund notices the White Witch as she prepares to attack Peter. Edmund rushes angrily towards the White Witch and fights her. Edmund is injured, knocked aside, and confronted by the White Witch. Peter is having a fantastic battle with the White Witch. Meanwhile, Aslan and his army arrive. The White Witch and her army are taken aback when they see them at the summit of the mountain. The White Witch quickly regains consciousness and confronts Peter. Aslan joins the fight and eliminates the White Witch with a single blow. Narnia triumphs, led by Peter, and is liberated from the clutches of the White Witch after hundreds of years. Everyone begins to rejoice. Lucy and the others approach Edmund, who is lying on the ground in pain. Lucy uses a healing drop to instantly heal his wound. Lucy then sets about healing the rest of the wounded. Following that, we see a ceremony at the castle in which Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy are honored and crowned. These four completed the Narnia prophecy and are Narnia's kings and queens. Aslan returns, his mission completed. He'd never said goodbye to anyone. Lucy watches him walk along the beach from the castle. Mr. Tumnus approaches Lucy and informs her that Aslan must depart. Lucy asks him when she will see Aslan again. Mr. Tumnus responds that Aslan will return whenever he is needed. Aslan is not present when Lucy looks back at the beach during her conversation with Mr. Tumnus. Mr. Tumnus gives Lucy the handkerchief she gave him and tells her that Lucy needs it more. Lucy smiles and takes the handkerchief. Many years pass happily in this manner, and the four siblings grow up. They come across the same lamp post they first saw in Narnia while riding through the forest. They recall the vacant room and closet. The four of them look for the path and eventually find it. When they emerge from the closet and return to their normal lives, they are in the same time period as before they went to Narnia. That is, they revert to childhood. The door to the room suddenly opens, and Professor Kirk enters. Professor Kirk notices everyone slumped to the floor and wonders why. Professor Kirk, according to Peter, would not believe it if they told him. Professor Kirk, on the other hand, gets excited and asks Peter to give him a shot. This brings the story to a close.